Should be good.
Good evening, then. Welcome to the Zoom meeting for the Open Space Committee, July 24, 2023. This open meeting of the Open Space Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law March 29, 2023. All members of the Open Space Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the Open Space Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of the meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Welcome all, and let's just confirm by voice roll who is present. We'll go around for what I see on my screen. Bill Pierce.
Here.
Paul Cacciatore.
Here.
Ashley Davies.
Here.
Dan Clark.
Here.
Brian Belfer.
Here.
And John Campbell. I am here as well. That is 6 members. We have a quorum, so we can continue. Thank you all for making time to come to the meeting. It's been a while since we met. I am going to recommend flipping items 1 and 2 in the agenda so that we can get right into welcoming our newest member, Paul. And Paul, we are like grateful beyond belief. We have not had a rec person actually come to meetings in, I can't remember when.
Well, if I can make it, I will. Just to give you a quick background on myself and for the public out there. I've been a resident of Northborough for 21 years, live on Northgate Road, and have been a youth baseball coach for 11 years in the town. As my boys have grown now, went off to UNH this fall, and I have a sophomore at Algonquin. I'm also the athletic booster president for all sports at the high school, both boys and girls. And I also sit on the committee of the new athletic complex that's being built. Wow. So I keep busy for sure. I am familiar with most residents that kind of either I've coached their kid or seen them in passing or know them. I certainly know Brian from years past. And I also coached soccer when my kids were a little younger too. So long resident, and I'm glad I can participate, and I thank you for welcoming me.
Thanks for the background. I am a UNH alum and a Northborough Baseball Board alum and coach for 10 plus years myself. So appreciate that.
One thing I will add is I work for the Boston Celtics, and I've been there for 27 seasons.
Wow.
My training is in fan experience and arena operations, hence working on the athletic complex and tapping in to make sure that that we're headed down the right path, to make sure that that gets done correctly and all that kind of good stuff. So no one on this board is to approach me for tickets. No, I'm kidding, but but thank you, and I appreciate it. And if anyone, feel free to reach out to me with regard to any of the work, commission stuff or any boards that I sit on.
Thank you for the update, and I appreciate you coming. I think your arm was kind of twisted because you're new on the rec commission, so that's the way I heard it.
Not true. I knew if Brian was here, I have to be here.
We're good.
I feel like I'm getting blamed for something now.
Thank you for any role you played, Brian. No, seriously, glad to have you. The committee needs people. We need new energy. That kind of leads me to what was item 1 on the agenda, which will make item 2 now. But we've had trouble meeting. Everybody on this committee is now on other committees, more than one other in many cases. You just described your busy schedule. So it's hard for us to get together. We haven't met since January. Meetings were canceled either due to timing or lack of quorum and so on. And yet, I think this committee is still very important to the town. When I first got on, it was 20 years ago, I believe now. And the committee didn't really have strong direction. We knew what we were supposed to do. And the first thing we did was sponsor the Community Preservation Act getting on the ballot in Northborough. And so that was very important work. And of course, it's spawned activity for us because now we finally had a resource for funds and could actively pursue conserving of land. And it very much overlaps with recreation. That's why it's so important to have you. Half of the projects we get involved in are involved in some way. If we're trying to get land, it's going to be recreation space, or it'll be used for recreation, passive or otherwise. And so having a voice in what's important is very good for the committee. So thank you. When we were trying to get a quorum for this meeting, and I was having a couple email exchanges with Vinny, I wondered if we should adopt a regular date. And we've tried to do this 4th Monday in the month before, and then we've gone off it for various reasons. And we have trouble making meetings every month, and we don't usually need them. Sometimes we would sort of take the summers off. So I came up with an idea, and I'm interested in feedback if you think it's a good idea, and that is to adopt a every other month schedule. And if this was month 1, then our next meeting would be in September. The following one would be in November, the next one in January. And I thought that would be enough meeting time, and it also dovetails with what we normally do in the fall, which is look for opportunities for CPA projects and related things and get those things going. And then in November, we may be finalizing or getting agreement on our CPA proposals. And in January, we might be participating in the public hearings for CPA. So it's has been a big part of our committee's work. So I'm interested in feedback. Good idea. Still too many meetings. Do people think it'd be easier to commit to that kind of schedule? Just pitch in. Yep, Bill.
I think it's a great idea. I'm just a little concerned with the 4th Monday. Vinny, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the select board meets that day. I think they're the 2nd and the 4th Mondays of the month.
They're meeting Tuesday. I think they're meeting tomorrow, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, normally they're meeting Wednesday this week because there were people who were unavailable, but I believe it's usually the 2nd and the 4th Monday of the month.
Let me look at
I don't think you're wrong, Bill, but we struggled with that over the last year. We had an active select board rep in Scott Rogers, and that hadn't happened for even more years than the recreation rep. But we try to juggle meetings around his schedule, and it worked sometimes and not others. And each time we looked for another Monday or another day, there was other conflicts. 3rd Monday of the month, Trails meets consistently, so that hasn't worked. So I think we might have to just accept that there'll be some overlap with select board meetings. Is your concern not being able to, not having the rep or not being able to see or participate in select board meetings?
I think the rep, as well as just participation, like if Vinny were to need to speak to the select board, he wouldn't be available for this meeting.
Understood.
Yeah,
It would only be 6 occasions. So
I think, in the past, this is kind of how we did it. And I feel like we often had meetings at the same time as the Board of Selectmen. And it worked out okay because we can kind of, once in a while, if we have to, juggle ours. And they do mix it up every so often too. So it's hard to, I feel like there's always some other group that's meeting at the same time. As long as it's not a group that one of us is actively supposed to be on, I think that's more important. And we are all on other things.
Yeah, so speaking to that, think of your other committees. I don't think Monday conflicted with conservation. Is that right, Dan?
The fourth Monday, no, that should be all right.
Yeah,
We do
conservation
meet on-
is
Tuesday. Recreation's Tuesday.
Conservation Mondays or Tuesdays, Dan, I forget.
We meet on Mondays, but I think, Vinny, isn't it the
Second.
second, yeah, so we should be all right.
So
It's hard to
there's-
keep track of all these.
Yeah, it's exactly kind of why I'm bringing it up. I know Ashley, you're on 2 other committees, right?
Yeah, I think the town hall feasibility is gonna be Thursdays at 7, so I think that'll be fine, and I don't know how often, at this point. And I'm not sure about a master plan. We're all kind of on a hiatus.
Right.
John, if you think the third Monday would be better for this committee, we could possibly switch trails to the fourth, because I don't think we overlap with select board stuff very much. And we tend to be fairly fluid in being able to move our meetings.
Well, I appreciate that, but quite frankly, Trails Committee is more organized and active than this committee. You guys meet regularly. There's always a standing agenda. You have participants. So many people have that ingrained into their schedule that would be hard to justify switching it. Particularly if we're just going to do 6 meetings a year. Sometimes I think it's great when we have joint meetings once in a while, but we could do that and then it frees up a 4th Monday, but not sure I can ask you to make that proposal.
But Monday conflicts aside, I like the idea of the every other month. I think that's a solid plan.
Yeah, I feel like that's worked, and we can always delay if we don't have anything to discuss.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we could, let's try that schedule. Let's set the next meeting for the 4th Monday of September. And I hope to get, with enough notice, we can get full participation and then bring it up again. If there's a better idea for a day, we could explore it or just get concurrence from Leslie and Paul are the only other missing members, right? Except for the potential board member liaison. So does that work?
Yep.
At least we have another date. We'll put it on the calendar now. We have plenty of notice. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And that is, did I say it right? September 25?
Yep.
Okay. All right, fair enough. I would like to recommend passing over the next agenda item until we have the full committee, hopefully on September 25. If that's okay. So done. Okay, so we're getting back to a few of our standing agenda items, and they actually kind of segue one into the next with a couple of suggestions I'm going to make. But Vinny nicely updated our spreadsheet chart that he'd been trying to do, which I think is great. And if everybody could pull it up, I have a printed copy, but at least let's go down it. And if there's
I
any
can
new
screen
information-
share if you want, John.
Oh, that'd be great.
I
If
think
there's
I
any
can
new
anyway.
information to add, bring it up. And I can start off with one item. I see it. Is that page 1, Vinny?
Yes. Yeah, it's the top of the sheet.
Perfect. So I'll just start off. One that caught my mind in that you brought up, Vinny. I believe you mentioned that Mr. Manny, is it Paul Manny, had received a letter from someone?
Yes, Paul
Mhm.
Manny. I was talking to him, and I ran into him when I was inspecting another site in town, and he mentioned that he got a letter recently, and I thought you had sent it out, John, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So I never followed up with him again. I just happened to meet with him. I knew he was Northborough Oil and he was right there. So I just figured I'd take the opportunity to talk with him. So he said he had gotten a letter recently, and I wasn't sure if any of the other members might have sent something.
So we Leslie had spoken with his mother a few times. I think she knew his sister, who was managing things there for the mom. So Leslie had the most recent conversation, I think, and I think we sent a letter back then. I know Norm Corbin was also in touch with them about preserving the house, the Historic Commission. So could be like an older letter that he's just gotten a hold of now just because of his mother's passing. I don't know.
Oh, okay. And what street is that? This is generally by street.
Church.
Wait.
Yep, that's that one, Church Street.
And
I
that's,
assume it's his mother. Maybe it's his grandmother that passed. I don't know the family so well.
I'm not sure that it's probably his mother.
Yeah, it's a beautiful old home on the right when you're heading out of town on Church and
Yeah,
They-
big yellow house.
Okay. Yeah.
I haven't noticed that the tree farm's really very active, except maybe for regular returning customers.
We went about 7 years ago or 6 years ago, and it was kind of like they were just letting them grow up, and they kind of chop off the bottom half and let you take the top at home or something. So yeah, I don't think they're keeping it up.
Right. So I think it's an important piece of land to keep track of. But I don't know that it has a whole lot of a high value in terms of being contiguous with any other parcel, but still very, very nice piece of land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that in the color coding here, the yellow in this area is that it's just a general letter. It's a letter of interest from the Open Space Committee. The upper one's in red. That's being developed. So that's the property over on Barefoot Road. That's now being developed with a warehouse. They just got a land disturbance permit from the Conservation Commission. And I think, Paul or Bill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they got a permit from the planning board as well.
Yes, they did.
Okay, so I think they're moving forward. So I would suggest we take the red ones off the list, but I just wanted to confirm with all of you.
Yeah, very well. Vinny, the next one down brings to my mind in the minutes that we'll get to at the end, I guess. There's a reference that I spoke about a letter to Juniper Hill that I needed to follow up on. I think we are in fact talking about Indian Meadow. And there we had sent a letter and I had a phone call with one of the representatives of the owner of the Indian Meadow property. And that's really where the comment came. And I think in the meeting, I said that I was going to follow up with that person just to update the conversation and see if he remembered us. And I have not done that yet, but I'm making a mental note to do it. And you're relatively new, Vinny, to Northborough, but really brief history. That land's been an operating golf course for a long time, but there was a point in time when another party was interested in buying it and putting a baseball facility there. And as it turned out, they ended up deciding against that piece of land and instead put it over in the parcel across from Northborough Crossing.
Yep.
That you probably see now is a very active facility, actually.
Yep.
And it was after that we tried to follow up with the owners of Indian Meadow that now operate, a banquet facility in the building. And they told me at the time they like having the golf course. They like the aspect of it. They like keeping it there. They had no active interest in moving on from that. However, that was 5 years ago.
Okay.
It might
And so-
be, it might be worth engaging SVT again, just because they did successfully conserve the Southborough golf course
Really?
now, and so the Southborough golf course on 85, it's remaining as a golf course, and they work with the town to keep it kind of managed, sort of the edging is managed in a certain way, and then there's some kind of agreement, whereas when it's no longer worth it, or there's something about transitioning it out of a golf course sometime in the future. So I don't know, it might be worth, talking to them and seeing if they have ideas for how we could work with the landowners here, because it's so, it's got so much of Hot Brook running through it. It's such a key piece for the Assabet River. It would be really nice to conserve it.
Yeah, very, very important to that neighborhood,
Yeah.
sort of protects it as a buffer from, Route 9 really being so close. And so it has a lot of value in a lot of ways. Hey, in Southborough, so do they have an actual conservation restriction, which means it's either a golf course or it stays as open space?
It's an actual conservation restriction that SVT holds. The town owns the golf course. It used to be owned by St. Mark's, I think. And so now the town owns it. There's a conservation restriction on it, which allows the golf course to continue for a certain amount of time with certain restrictions. I can't remember all the details of it because I wasn't involved in that project, but yeah, they're still running it. People are still golfing there, but it is conserved.
That's really interesting. So we could actually bring up the idea.
Yeah.
And with that example, maybe there's some interest. I don't know.
Yeah.
That would be a different way to come into it. Not so much that the town is buying it, but would they agree to the restriction? We already have right of first refusal, right? Isn't that?
If it stays in 61, we do, yeah.
Paul's got his hand raised.
Please speak up if I can't
Yeah.
see you.
One thing to keep in mind, so I also sit on the Nichols College Sports Management Advisory Board, and the college just bought the golf course adjacent to their school, and they're having their sport management students run the golf course, and which I think is a really interesting concept. But they also have hired a company, and there's probably 3 or 4 of them out there that actively participates and manages golf courses that the town could hire if so desired to manage the golf course. And when I say manage, I mean superintendent of greens, maintain the integrity of the of the course, both obviously environmental is really important to us, but there are companies out there that are doing that right now. So I would also be in support of conserving that, and however we choose to do that, and keep it a golf course if we can, or recreational space. There's definitely ways around that, to keep that 9-hole there. Obviously, that I think you made reference, John, earlier, that Indian Meadow used to be a bigger golf course, and that's now developed all those homes that you can see You can drive down the street and know exactly which hole you are on because you can tell by the pine trees and where the fairways were. If you go through the Indian Meadow neighborhood. So anyway, I just wanted to just bring that up, is that there are courses, there are companies out there that could do that for the town if we chose to do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be managed, by us per se. There could be a management consulting firm that's already out there that has specialty in golf course management.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's good information. I don't remember seeing anything for Indian Meadow on our list. So if I will add a new row for Indian Meadow, anyone have an idea what the address would be, or is it off Indian Meadow Road?
It is the Northborough portion is really what we're talking about, because part of the properties in Westboro.
Yep.
So the parcel, I don't know, under the parcel listing, what address it shows.
It's 0 Indian Meadow Drive.
Nice,
All
thank you.
right,
So, because
excellent.
there's this little right of way from
Right.
Indian Meadow Drive in
Next to
Northborough.
95, Indian Meadow.
Let's see, it's right next, it's between 99 and 105
Okay,
Indian Meadow Drive. That's where the entrance is.
all right. I'll add that to the list. And that's a specific letter, not the yellow general. It would be a specific. So that would be, I think we used green for that.
Right.
No, green was backland. Gray, I guess, blue gray.
Lot specific, yeah.
Yep.
And for your files, I can send you the old letter.
All right, that would be great.
And then somewhere we've got the address of the owner, which is in some other town, but for what that's worth.
Yes, I was looking at that property just recently because of they're in a butter to an applicant or a soon-to-be applicant. So the assessors actually tracked down the owner of record for the Westboro assessors. So I think I've got that. So thank you.
Okay, yeah, because I saw there was like a Hopkinton address I had and a New Jersey address. So.
All right, I can add that one. But then going back to the Brigham Street, that was all the Juniper Hill golf course. And you had spoken at length on that at the last meeting in regards to whether they were interested, and then the one associated right next to it wasn't worth it unless the whole Juniper Hill golf course kind of went as a group, but still looked like it was something that was decent and worth sending a general letter to.
And have we had any response from them in the recent past? Juniper Hill? No. Okay.
My only conversations are when they have beaver backups, beaver dam backups.
Got it.
I'm going to say this wrong, but there was a parcel on South Street, I guess. And it's not where the driving range is now, but I thought it was near there, and that's something we did discuss, and it came up before the town, and goes back a few years, but it wasn't.
I think you might mean School Street. Was it a small piece along
Yeah,
School Street?
thank you. I meant to say school, yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
And now I don't know what happened to it, but I don't think it was significant enough.
Was it the school 142 School Street site where they have the golf course, the golf training, golf classes?
Yeah, I don't think it was that parcel, but maybe
It wasn't, although it'd be nice to, if they were interested in conserving that. I think it was the piece, it was like 92 School Street or something. They ended up building a house right there, like on the stream, like right by the stream. I think, yeah, somewhere over there. I think it was where the river runs through.
I think we should add the golf teaching center as a piece of property to the list. That 142. That's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a nice piece of property over there that they use. It's fairly large. I think the abutters are at the end of Catherine Drive, if I remember correctly, to that property. But I do think we should probably identify that. My son actually works at the golf course, so I hope they don't sell it. But
there's a whole bunch of parcels back there that are really great. I mean, the Northborough Water owns one, and then you have the golf teaching facility, and then North Court, and then there's a couple of other big pieces that run along, that the Assabet River runs through, all back there. That, I mean, I don't know, could be trails, but either way, worth conserving and not backfilling in any more development.
And those are off of School Street, Ashley, that you're looking at?
Between School and South, yeah.
Okay.
Who is the actual owner of the golf training parcel?
There's the MDD Realty Corp, so.
Because
What's her name is Margaret, maybe? The guy who owns, I can't think of the guy's name who owns Juniper Hill, runs
Dudley?
Juniper Hill. Dudley. Yeah, I think it's Dudley's mom.
so that's the connection.
Yeah. Because I thought it was Dudley's property associated with the Juniper Hill, and he said, no, it's a separate entity.
I mean, the golf training is very active, but when Paul was talking, I thinking in the back of my head, what if Juniper Hill Golf Course someday decided to relocate the practice range and wanted to incorporate it closer to the golf course, and that parcel then became available for some reason? I mean, that's a scenario that could happen, because it's really kind of disassociated. It's not super convenient to practice there if you're going to go play at the course, but people do. So, back to your original point, Paul, for sure, we should
I can add that.
just get more engaged with the owners of Juniper, I guess. Obviously, we don't expect them to close, but things happen.
If we're adding to the list, it would be great just to add the couple of properties that are back there. I don't think we've ever put them on the list, so I can tell you which ones they are. Although in future, it may be better to have us email you this, just so
Okay.
this is not like people's addresses in public record. People get a little sensitive.
Oh, okay. Do you want me to pull the stop the screen sharing? I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, might be good.
I didn't think of that either. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, if we all have it. I'm sorry about that. That's a
No,
good
it's
thought.
fine. I didn't think of it until just now.
Probably a better approach.
I
Right.
thought property ownership was like totally public record.
It is, but
Well,
yeah.
but
Talking about buying it is not, so,
right.
Yeah, people don't really, and then,
Yeah.
and then people that want to do the opposite of what we're doing might be like,
Right.
perfect, check. Here's
Yeah,
my
they did all our homework for us, right?
Gotcha.
good point.
Yeah. But yeah, I can just email the other couple addresses.
Yep,
that I
that'd be
was
great.
thinking of adding.
Any others to update? I don't know that we have to go down every line item, but if people have any new information or.
No, I mean, again, like, talking about people's properties, but DeFutis's property is on the market. It's been on the market for quite some time, so I don't know that that means there's an interest in selling that piece below the Fish and Game land on Mount Pisgah, but the house is for sale, so
I didn't know that.
it might be worth renewing conversation. Yeah, it was on and off the market for the last year, I think. Hasn't really budged or sold. Definitely hasn't sold, but it hasn't budged in price either. But you
Is
know,
that one on our list already?
it used to be,
I don't remember. I remember the name, but I don't see it here.
Is that
it'd
the
be Main Street,
210 Green?
should be. I think that sounds right.
Yeah, I don't have a 210.
You do.
I do?
Yeah. Spreadsheet line 31.
242.
It's 242 Green. Yeah, 242.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Owner is
The
210.
house is at
Okay,
210.
all right.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that's one that if we're sort of just pondering that out loud, if we can't actually buy it, and if someone else does, that would be prime to get some kind of an easement along the brook to reestablish trail connectivity up to Pisgah from Green Street, which we lost a bunch of years ago.
Yeah, and has Fish and Game changed their tune about trail access? Because for a bit, they weren't allowing access through their property there, right?
Fishing Game, no, there's no access issue with Fish and Game. It's a maintenance and signage.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you can
Because it
still
was
go
definitely
there.
access. It was definitely access the last time I had heard about it. It was like, yeah, we're not advertising our trails. They're not open. It's only for hunting.
It was never that they weren't open. It's that they just didn't want them on maps and they didn't want any maintenance done. But they can't actually close them because then you'd be excluding all the users.
Yeah. All right. Well, if there hasn't been an issue, then it's good.
No, they've been quiet and there's been some turnover at Fish and Game at the top,
Yeah.
which is exciting. So we'll
Yeah.
see if they maybe loosen up their oddball restrictions.
Yeah. It was a different approach for sure.
I just looked up the 210 property listing
Mhm.
and it lists at 7.7 acres. That
Yeah.
doesn't include
So
all the lower land then, right?
it doesn't know. So it's just the house lot. But again, if that's for sale, would the next door, be something?
Michael
I mean,
Durkin.
Todd Hellwig would be the best person to ask, right? Because he was the last one to have conversations with the owner.
True. Michael Durkin is the listing agent,
Oh, okay.
which is interesting on a number of levels. But you could speak to him about
Yeah,
whether there's ever any interest,
right.
because at least he's a legitimate liaison to the property owner.
Right. That's true.
Is that
Mhm.
is that too proactive of a move, or should we try it?
No, I think that's worth trying.
I'll volunteer unless somebody knows him a lot better.
No, do not.
I know him only a little.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay. Dan, any update on your neighbors there?
No, I guess it's the son-in-law. They built that big house.
Okay.
Seems to be actively farming up there. He's got a bunch of cows and looks like he redid some fields. I think they're pastures. Looks like they're set up for pastures. So
Okay.
I don't know. He seems actively engaged in the land. So I'm guessing he probably isn't interested in doing anything up there, but
Okay.
at least there are no houses. So
I mean, it might be worth just sending some information on the APR program, although I'm betting he knows about it. But yeah,
Yeah,
By the way, in the big picture, I think we keep procrastinating a fresh round of letters, right?
right.
Maybe we could
That's
make,
like what we're prepping for, right?
yeah, maybe we could make it as, make September's meeting specifically agree on, letter language, which we've done before, and which property owners should get them, and then set the campaign off, would be fairly good timing, right?
Yep. Yeah. Perfect. I mean, there's not all that much that has changed.
Can I ask a question for the committee? It seems to me that a lot of activity happened in 2017. Was there a specific reason why that happened? As far as letters being sent?
We just kind of did them in batches. I
Okay.
think the first round was like around 2014 or something. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I think so.
we decided to do it a couple years later, and then we just kind of didn't get much traction. So we haven't for a while. But again, these kind of things you just have to keep trying, and it takes decades. So
I'm just wondering if we, set a cadence on certain properties where it's like, every 3 years or
we
whatever,
should.
something along something consistently, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I'm not talking about year after year after year, but if we have our eyes on certain things, and we prioritize that as a commission and committee, then, as things come off the list and things go on the list, what kind of cadence and procedure do we want to have in place? Is it an automatic letter when something gets added? Or is it end of the year and we engage with the person and a letter only goes out if we hear interest? I don't know. Again, being new to this, I'm just merely coming from an outsider, just looking at procedurally and looking at the spreadsheet. I'm just wondering if we actively engage, if we identify as committee a parcel of land that, it's almost like an automatic, in my opinion. If we identify and agree as a group, then the letter should be sent. And then we know that 2023, a letter was sent of intent. That's just merely a suggestion. Maybe put that on the September agenda, or or if we need to, push that up if we think something's moving, then we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that, because it seems like we were doing it pretty regularly, and it seems like we just did it, but then it was however many years ago. So time flies. So yeah, it's good to have that a reminder, a schedule. That's great.
Just a question. Looking at this chart, I wasn't aware all these donations on Crawford Street to SVT.
Well, there was one donation to Crawford or
one
to
donation.
SVT.
It was, remember Mia went out, she walked it, and there wasn't going to be able to be trail access because of the way that the will was written. The woman wanted it just for wildlife. So the town turned it down because we can't acquire fee interest in property unless it's got public access. And then, so SVT took it, and the agreement that they have their sign out there. The agreement is that they can host like one walk a year or something like that, but it has to be supervised. I can't remember. I don't know if you know of any.
Yeah, it's, I'm actually having more trouble with the frontage lots that were left. It's all backland that SVT got. And
Yeah.
they were allowed a couple of site walks a year. I think it was 2 or 3 maybe, but it was just a limited site walks. So it's pretty simple. But there are 4 frontage lots that are working through the town's approval process, and it's possibly going to be a common driveway. There's discussions of that, and then there's also the option of them being separate 4 individual lots with driveways coming down onto the road.
Okay. Yeah, the piece is surrounded by development. It's not like a particularly great ecologically,
Right.
It's not near like Cold Harbor Brook or anything. It's on the north part of Crawford.
Right.
Forgive me, I had to take a phone call.
So I guess the only thing I would want to do further with the committee is to have you just confirm the items in red are, I mean, they're basically developed lots, just to get your agreement that we take them off the list. They're actually being developed pretty much right now.
Makes sense. Take them off.
That's
Yep.
easy. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a real bummer that the pieces on Lincoln Street,
Yeah.
the school should have bought them, but everybody told the school that they weren't developable and they couldn't build
Oh,
fields there. Now we have 2 giant houses and the school needs fields.
right.
It's really unfortunate. I feel like this has happened several times, and I think we need to push harder when the powers that be say, well, they're not developable. Well, then how come they keep getting developed? So just maybe a lesson for us next time.
Brings up the bad memory of I don't know, what was it, 22 years ago? When
Which one was that?
the big property on Lincoln that across from the school, that's now the Old 55 community, but that
Yeah.
came up, we anyway.
Mhm.
This was before CPA, and we were, it would have been a great property for the town to own,
Yeah.
but
There's still a lot of land back there too, and it's unfortunate that there's that piece kind of cutting right into it.
yeah. But it was too bad the way that went down, but it is no more.
Yeah.
I think the committee should also keep in mind that properties around Melican and really pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna guess that that's probably the next school that gets updated in this town. If I had to guess, it's really my kids just got out of it, but it's definitely due. And we just want to be mindful. There's so much activity from a recreation standpoint over there. I mean, football putting in lights and there's all kinds of, the baseball diamond was done over. There's irrigation there. There's all kinds of stuff on the Melican property that lends itself to good open, areas. So I would definitely make sure that we can identify any open activity around Melican and try to get out ahead of it.
That's what we're talking about. The 105 and what is it, 95 Lincoln Street, that are, one house is already built and the next one is getting built. Those 2 were properties we looked at. So it's a bummer, but the back of a neighbor bought just to keep it open. But it could be a discussion maybe in the future behind those 2 houses. So Because that abuts the property behind the two houses does still abut the fields at Melican.
Mhm.
But there's not much left, to be honest, around Melican. Those were some prime real estate for the school, unfortunately. Yeah. But yeah, is Vinny, is the Zero Auger still on the list?
I don't remember that one.
Property
Zero.
on Auger,
How do you spell auger?
Auger.
Nope.
Yeah, so that came up for sale and we had been talking about purchasing and we didn't have the funds at the time, I think, but a neighbor ended up buying the land and keeping it open. So it was kind of like, well, we're not worried, but that's the land that could potentially be.
Okay, I can look that one up.
Yeah, I think, and the landowner owns land on West Street.
Is that where Auger is, over by West?
Yeah, it's right off of Lincoln but it comes, the land is kind of goes back towards West Street. Let me see if there's any others.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, for 7 years later, it's not too many properties lost off the list, but it is a bummer. And I think there's, more money to be had at the state level for conservation right now, just because of all the federal funding for,
And the new
conservation.
administration too.
Yeah, and water quality and, climate resilience and everything. We might have a better chance now than we did a couple of years back in acquiring something that becomes available. So.
And you, Ashley, referring to grants that might, be reimbursement grants if we were to acquire something? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. And so what used to be the land grant was really the best opportunity. Now, I think the landscape partnership grant has changed. I'd have to look and see, but it used to be you had to have 500 acres to get 1.5 million, but I think they've lowered the acreage in certain areas. You can check. So that's the one we use to do the Tri-Town project. That's that
Right.
grant. But now I think they've lowered the acreage requirement. I'll check. So just something else to keep in mind.
We're at a good point to kind of segue to the next agenda item. If we're ready to move on from specific line items in the spreadsheet. Is that okay?
Yep.
So I had this idea today. We've brought up the master plan a couple times, and when Scott was in the committee, he helped highlight and identify some things in a partial spreadsheet that we put together. All the projects in the master plan identified where Open Space Committee was involved, and that's fine. I'm not asking to get into that list right now, but I'm on the master plan implementation committee. Ashley is as well, and quite frankly, we've been pursuing this big agenda of the downtown revitalization. We've had an excellent consultant. The plans look glamorous, but there's not a lot in it that's executable or practical in the short term. But so in my head, with regard to the committee, and when we meet again, hopefully we'll get into it, but I'm looking for things that we might do on a shorter term to keep the momentum alive for adding to downtown. So toward that end, I got thinking about Town Common, how nice that came out, and things around there that I've often thought about, and this committee has talked about. You know, what else can we do more in that area? And it sort of comes up in the downtown meetings, in the master plan meetings, but not specific enough. So let me get to the point. When you walk around the Town Common, if you walk up Monroe to where it connects to Gale, there's a parcel on the corner there that's owned by someone that, you know, had kept it open for possible development, but I think it's still bare, right? And it's sort of just empty land, doesn't get really maintained. And, you know, so at times we've talked about it, can it be acquired? Can it be made prettier? Can it enhance walking or more sidewalk or just better walking ability up to Gale and eventually to Aspect Park? And then the next thing I thought about is the you know, the old drive-through at the bank and how that road comes up to Aspect Park. And whenever I walk up that way, I end up walking through that and keep thinking, why can't we do something with this? And it's part of one of the major master plan initiatives, but again, will that entire plan ever be actionable in the near term? But we don't know what the person who owns, I didn't look it up, but I've heard the people that own the old Lowe's that developed it, and it's not open for anything yet, that they also own the parcels behind it. I don't know if they own the parcel that includes that driveway. It got me thinking, are there parcels in town that you don't think of as open space, but if they were able to be acquired, do they become an extension of a park, an extension of recreation? You know, I keep thinking it'd be great to have we've often talked about a connection between the Town Common and Aspect Park. And so I got thinking about those little areas. And the third thing I wrote down on a much bigger scale is the Harvey land, which is the focus of another part of a master plan goal. But we've heard that property is changing hands, or already has changed hands. And I got wondering, the front pieces of lawn that you see that border the river, and you know, do we engage with that owner short term? Is some of that able to be parceled off as parkland? Does doing that give us you know, a leg up toward a future larger project for the master plan?
Yeah,
Those are the things that bounced off of my head, and, you know, back to the little parcel on Monroe, things like that are actions that the Open Space Committee can be proactive in. Is it making any sense?
yeah, I think what comes to mind as the most comparable project is when Bolton acquired a gas station on Main Street and turned it into the Town Common.
Oh,
They took
seriously?
it down, they cleaned it up, and they made it a beautiful Town Common. It took some serious fundraising, but I think in our case, Harvey is right on the Assabet River. I think that's even more compelling in a lot of ways, especially for some state funding to help us do that. I think based on the master plan, at least some of it would have to end up being developed. But I think we could start the conversations and try to get that in town ownership, and then, you know, figure out from there what's going to be open space and what piece is going to be, you know, put out to bid for a developer to develop some kind of, you know, economic driver in the center of town. But it's such a key piece. When I talked to ORS, who is the organization for the Concord, Sudbury, and Assabet, I mean, this is the one portion of the Assabet River through Northborough really that needs help. Everywhere else, it's pretty open, it's got wild and scenic designation, which is very rare in this country, on the Concord and Sudbury pieces. And so, it's down here where it needs the most assistance. And I think especially the Harvey property just like really stands out as a place where the Assabet is being crunched. So I feel like that would be really cool for us to do that. But then, the Bolton Town Common example brings me to the gas station that's right next door to our town common and what we could do there. I know that he's been approached and he was like, no, I'm not interested. But, people change their minds, and we could, keep an open dialogue and have him just talk to us if he ever changes his mind. But I think those two for sure. The last thing was the last time I talked to Lori about the drive-through along the old Bank of America that cuts all the way through to Gale. She said something like, it's owned by the bank. It's always going to be owned by the bank. It's never going to be anything but a bank. But I don't know. I don't know if that meant just the Bank of America parcel or if it meant the whole piece that cuts all the way through. But yeah, that would be phenomenal. So, I mean, adding the Harvey property, the gas station, and at least 11 Monroe to our letter list with very individualized letters, I think makes sense as a starting point. And then, maybe even that, the cut through piece, I just don't know who that person is that owns that. I think it is the person that owns the old Lowe's that is vacant at the moment. But
Yeah, if you can give me an address, I'm not familiar with that, the cut through piece.
So the cut through, I don't know if it's on the property or if it's like a completely separate easement. But the owner of that piece that it goes through is it's 16 Gale Street in Northborough.
Okay.
Basically Northborough. Do you need the addresses for the other ones, Vinny, or you have the other ones too?
Well, the gas station I can get, the Bank of America I can get, Harvey I know. What is that 16 Gale, the one that's at the top of Monroe, or is that 11 Monroe?
11 Monroe.
Okay. All right.
Well, and maybe even further down, with the new fire department building being built, right? You got what's going to be the old fire department. You've got the old fire department building there, right? You could almost make a river walk right along Cold Harbor Brook.
Yeah.
Right. You've got the the old burnt out furniture building that
no
one's building on. So you've got a nice long path almost right there, at least to start.
Yeah. And I remember I asked the consultants for the master plan about this, because when you're looking at the Harvey, where it comes out, there's almost this natural crossing you could imagine that comes across Hudson and goes down to the river under to Cold Harbor Brook and kind of goes all along there. And then, cross Church. And there's a lot of road crossings, but there's land along the brook that would be just really cool. And Northborough, the old fire department, or the current old fire department, would be
Is
a
that the
good
one on
place
Church
to
Street or the current?
No, on Pierce Street.
Yeah, the current one.
And then
but-
and then you basically would cross Church, and on the other side is the old fire department, right?
Yeah. Right.
And I mean,
share
I'm looking
my
at the
screen share
GIS
also.
map, and it, you could pretty much go all the way down, and then it's a little wooded once you get down closer towards Dunkin' Donuts, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice chunk. I mean, we could have a meeting or some conversations with some landowners down there just for an easement would be pretty cool. So it's a couple of businesses. I mean, the business at 10 Church Street, the tea place. I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to have people walking by. If the
Right.
Northborough Fire Department, the current fire department, turns into, a restaurant or something, which is what the master plan is envisioning, they would of course want that. And, there's a couple of private owners there, but
Right.
it'd be worth an ask.
And then you always have Sawyer's right across Pierce Street there. So you
Right.
sort of make it an entertainment area to be able to walk through.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, for the master plan to really happen, I think we do have to play a role in just having these conversations with people about the things that could be open space, could be trails, could be recreation. And if we want to make sure that those things are worked in, I think we need to be proactive about it, like you said, John.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, and
Yeah.
maybe you can help me broach it with our master plan people, but
Yeah.
so that we're working in concert. But what other means do we have right now at our disposal to go after parcels? We have CPA money in the conservation fund. That's our means outside of town meeting, and I don't think we're going to have anything to tee up for town meeting 2024 with regard to the master plan, other than I really don't know. That's part of what I'd like to talk about this fall with that committee. What is there an action item that we're trying to bring to the town? Is it another set of studies or preliminary architecture fees or whatever? I just don't know.
Yeah, and I think, the message that we keep hearing for everyone else's benefit at the master plan meetings is, this is a plan. These are great ideas. We want, to have this plan and maybe some staff at the town level to make it happen, but we don't have a say in what gets developed unless we as the town own the land. And so, with Harvey is such a big piece of it. Making it possible for the town to own land and have a say, would be really great. And the other big piece of the puzzle is where Town Common is, and the other piece is where is around Blake Street, and the town does own a lot of that land. So we've already got a leg up in those spots, but the Harvey piece, I think, is the real, unknown, unless we try to make something happen. But like you said, John, it did just change hands. It's owned by a Canadian company now. So getting a conversation going might be a lot trickier than it would have been a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and it's like, I guess, not our purview to get too deep into this committee with it, but it is a little crazy that we've been including it in the master plan potential for a year, and then all of a sudden it changes hands. And so what's that mean about the possibility?
It's not crazy. It's not anything different than we've done before.
Right.
It's not any different than us sending letters to other landowners in town.
Oh, no. True. From our committee, you mean? Yes.
Yeah. Right. So,
Well,
I
thanks
agree.
then.
Chat with master plan about it, but
Yeah,
we
let's, I don't, whether it needs to be an agenda item or we just get a discussion that we could play a role and make sure we're consistent with where that master plan committee believes we should be acting. Right?
Mhm.
Fair enough.
Especially if they have their eyes on certain parcels. I mean, you just identified 3 pretty quickly. And going back to my original point, John, I think you were on the phone call earlier, but I talked about setting up a cadence. As soon as this committee identifies a parcel of land that we want to send a letter to, almost make it like automatic. So like after this meeting, if there are 3 or 4 properties that we identify that want to make our list and they're yellow, then we should automatically send out a letter, basically in the interest of this committee, and just set up a cadence, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, for that check-in and sending out letters to those respective owners. Because if things do change hands, then at least we have an idea. Oh, wait, this parcel changed, a year and a half ago. Then now we have some type of paper trail for people that may come up after us, right? that leave the board. And I was just kind of looking at that, and right now I'm drinking from a fire hose, learning from all of you. But that's one of the things that I think just makes a lot of sense if we identify as a group. And Vinny does some homework, and we know that we're going to send a letter. Okay, 2023, here's our 5 or 6, and they go out, and then it'll be up to your respective members to do follow up. And then maybe it's 2026, we follow up with the same piece of landowners.
I think it's an excellent contribution. We have approached these letter things in fits and starts, and we get motivated, and we do a round, and then, like I said earlier in the meeting, we've been kind of procrastinating it for a year or so, and so Vinny has been very helpful in getting our chart updated, and so we have a bit of a roadmap, no pun intended, and but your idea is great. So okay, good, we've got these targets. Now let's make it a regular thing, not just something we come back to.
And I'd love to put something on the agenda for next meeting, and this is kind of unrelated, but it's kind of related. Just thinking about funding sources to tee up while we're thinking about sending out these letters. I did just check the landscape partnership grant, and the acreage requirement in Worcester County hasn't changed, which is unfortunate. We're the highest in the state. But the MVP program has been, and I know we've seen it successfully used, and I feel like I'm like a broken record talking about it, but it would be great to take a look at Northborough's MVP plan and just see if it's possible to make any amendments where we can support land conservation, in certain strategic areas of town, because it's been really helpful for other communities. But I think our plan didn't address open space. It didn't address green solutions, which is kind of the point of the MVP plan. So it would be great to take another look at it. And I know a few communities have done amendments. So amending that. And then once you have those items in your plan, you can apply for action grants from the MVP program. And the grants are very sizable. Multi-million-dollar grants have gone out. I think a Cuttyhunk got like a $2 million grant. I mean, it's kind of, and that island's going to be underwater in no time. So, I mean, I think it's worth just taking a look at that and seeing what we can do and getting it ready to support, land acquisitions.
Good idea. I made a note of it.
Okay.
So I sense a lull in that discussion, and it kind of lets us segue into the next line item, which says potential CPA projects for the FY25 or the 2024 town meeting. And I think if every year we go for more conservation fund money to put in savings, quote unquote. This past year, the CPC was focused on creating a reserve for what we thought was going to be a need for White Cliffs. It didn't exactly come down that way. It's not that White Cliffs is going to go away. CPC still has to play a big role as that gets defined. But that application ends up taking lower priority, and in this case, we were focused on phase 2 of the Senior Center Trail program, and also the Aqueduct Bridge project, obviously. So I guess what I'm getting at is, if we're going to go to CPC again for conservation money, it would be great if we had a little more definition to where our targets were, our opportunities to acquire land. We're not any closer to that, even though we did a lot of review of these opportunities, but
I mean, John, I think all this discussion that you brought up about supporting the master plan, the downtown plan, and, trying to make things happen there, I think that's really compelling. We're acquiring funds so that we can step in to, help enable the implementation of the downtown plan.
I guess it's a valid point. Like, instead, if our the CPC tends to focus in a certain year. I mean, 2 years ago it was affordable housing, and that project didn't take off. And then, White Cliffs is obviously kind of omnipresent now. There's no reason why. Yeah, it's another reason to augment our conservation money savings, because there's going to be a place to use it to support the master plan. So
Yeah,
that's
and I
good-
think we can make
good
clear
focus.
that there are plenty of multi-use projects, for lack of a better term, that can involve open space and recreation and historic preservation or affordable housing in the downtown. Like, there's lots of places where that was highlighted. So, it doesn't mean that it has to be used on a project that's going to be solely conservation, but the conservation piece can be funded and allows, some funding for the other pieces to happen as well. So, kind of offsets.
Okay, great. We'll bring fresh perspective to that, and I'll leave it on the September meeting agenda and put together our application during that meeting too.
Great.
When Paul was talking about Milliken and different things going on, and I wrote down, is there a rec project for which they're going to request CPA funds this year? Do you know of one, or are there ones that need to be thought about? We've done a couple things already, for Milliken, and were you specifically thinking about something else that we could do other than buying land?
We really haven't talked about that all that much. I will tell you that the topic of redoing some of the tennis and basketball courts were brought up in our rec meeting. But we decided to table that because we feel like that's probably part of the school project and not necessarily using CPA funds for that. Because we think that if the school does get renovated, it is going to be, full overhaul, and potentially, playground space, right? And I would argue that I was in town for the Lincoln Street School project, and the baseball field in the back was an afterthought that is now turned into a field and not a baseball field. And so, but nothing as of yet. We do have a meeting, I believe, not this month, but next month. And Allie said that she would get some things together for us, and some priorities. I will tell you that pickleball keeps coming up in our meetings, more of them. And you can see that 135 is packed every single night. There are people requesting lights. I mean, it's endless. And I feel like that's probably going to be the next thing, maybe, which is expanding that program, and that growing program within the town. But nothing official was talked at the last meeting. Just that a lot of talk about the popularity of pickleball in the courts at 135.
Yeah, I feel like just going back to what you said at the beginning, I was at another town meeting where somebody requested CPA funds for a swing set at a school, and everybody was like, no, that comes out of the school budget. You know, it was like a real big issue. So I feel like focusing on the pickleball and things that, you know, wouldn't be able to come out of school fund makes sense.
Yeah, and some of these downtown stuff might be part of that.
Yeah.
It very well could be, right?
Yeah,
like-
they've worked playgrounds into the planning, so that would be, yeah, that'd be a good place.
You know, it's not like we don't have the support within the town right now. And I agree with both John's comments and yours, Ashley. Synchronizing us with the master plan, because that could be a way that, you know, tying the community that we already kind of have you know, you can see Assabet Park is thriving every night and during the day, right? So it's not like that wasn't money well spent. And now we're looking ways to connect the park to the master plan and the downtown property. So anything that we can do to connect the recreation to the plan makes a lot of sense. And I certainly can come back to the rec committee and, you know, and talk about how hopefully the next one in September, we can talk about the synchronization of the two. And you tell me how you want to plug in or discussion within the master plan. But I can see sort of the vision, just kind of reading between John and your lines, Ashley, about tying in the recreation element to the master plan, whether it's on the Harvey property or somewhere else, that corner property. You know, there's a lot of good things downtown that we can tap into.
Well, very good. Great having you on the committee again, so we can keep that connection between open space, recreation, master plan, CPA. So appreciate that.
Mhm.
I feel like we're winding down. Does anybody have any other comments on anything we discussed tonight or any action items not on the agenda? Feel free to speak up. Hearing none, we can move on to considering our minutes from January 23rd. And I had one edit that I spoke about earlier, which was it's only on page 2 in the under outreach plan paragraph, and there's the bulleted list of items. And the second one saying Brigham Street, Juniper Hill. Last communication appears to be a phone call by Mr. Campbell in 2017. I think we were talking about Indian Meadow. I do not believe I made a phone call with regard to anything around Brigham Street, Juniper Hill. Maybe I'm forgetting, but I don't think.
Yep, I can take care of that.
So you can either delete it all or no update, because I don't remember what we updated. If anybody else remembers something about that bullet item from January, please speak up. I don't. Other than that, I think it's misquoted.
Okay, I can scratch it.
Anything else in the minutes? Hearing no other comments, can someone make a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of January 23rd, 2023.
Second,
Bill made the motion. The second came from,
Dan.
thank you, Dan.
Yep.
And, okay, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call to approve the minutes. Paul Cacciatore.
I abstained since I wasn't
You
part of the
abstained. I'm
committee.
sorry, you were exactly right. Ashley,
Approved, yes.
you were also absent according to the minutes. Is that wrong?
I thought I was shown in there as saying something, but I didn't remember being there, so I don't remember.
I think you showed up for a bit and then you had to leave
Okay.
or something happened.
That sounds about right.
All right, we'll take your vote then. Dan,
Yes,
Brian Belford,
Yes.
and Bill,
Yes.
and me, John, yes. So minutes are approved 5-0.
5011.
All right. All right, so I starred, all the items are gonna carry over on the agenda and I'll, work with Vinny to update that. And then I added Ashley's item, discuss funding sources and be more focused on that. And I added, just add some enhancement to the discussion of a CP application, at a minimum, the one for conservation funds. And we're
John,
definitely
just to add in,
letters and more specifically make that I guess the capstone of that meeting. Let's have letter text, approve it, and decide who's going to get one. Fair enough.
Do we have existing samples of old letters, like archived somewhere?
Yeah, I think, and we sent them around before, and maybe Vinny can do it again.
I'll try to dig them out and I'll try to dig out the old letters. And also in the newly revised open space and rec plan, which is on the conservation and the open space and the rec site, I think it has funding sources for different items. So that might be a good reminder source for the members to kind of just look through and say, oh yeah, we talked about this project, and in the open space and rec plan, it said there's money available from some opportunity there.
Great. Okay. I think we're good. Any other comments? Otherwise, we are ready to adjourn.
Just need a motion to adjourn and you're good.
Take one.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Bill.
Second.
Thank you, Brian. We'll do a roll call. Bill,
Aye.
Paul, Ashley,
Aye.
Dan,
yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and me. We are adjourned.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
very
you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Very good meeting.
Thanks.
Thanks for making time.
Aye.